Jim Morris, the producer, and staff, kind of management level, they held the project together. They were the body of the project. Technical direction includes model building and rigging and painting and shading. They were the hands of the project. As well, then all these other parts, the Pixar support staff, they include everything from facilities, even to the things we eat at Luxo Cafe. Down at the bottom there, you see Pixar University. If you're an artist and you're interested in animation, you can take classes to learn more about animation. This is a typical day art review with Andrew Stanton, working with him, and so usually the room is filled with the director, the production designer, the artists, of course, art directors. We have technical supervision keeping us on track, and of course a few people to support the management aspect. In these meetings, Andrew will kind of give us his notes. He'll react to our sketches and drawings that are up on the wall. Hopefully we won't fall asleep in process. This is the door leading into the art room. Just random sketches, imagery, and quotes were all behind and scheduled together. This is a note from Ralph, our production designer. It's always good to hear about that. It's always good to hear that he's not a serial killer. And just random stuff, like this guy is saying, don't ever catch a cactus, right? People in hell want ice water. All related to the production, well, except for this one, perhaps. But this slide, it may be a little off color, but it sends the message. You know, we do work hard, but we also want whatever's up on the screen to be the best possible. This is a sketch of Andrew. And here he is sitting in one of the screening rooms. He wrote WALL-E back in 1995, and he approached me when I was working still on cars. He asked me to give him ideas about what WALL-E would look like. So he gave me these three things. He wanted binoculars for eyes. He wanted WALL-E to box up into this cube, and also first and foremost, he was a trash compactor. In Andrew's story, the earth is covered in garbage, and it is WALL-E's job to clean it up. So I started very loose, just sketching all these ideas from Friday night until Sunday night, just sketching whatever came to mind, what I thought this character might look like, and how he might execute this job of cleaning up the earth by cubing the garbage. Maybe I threw in some ideas about where he lived and what he collected. So Andrew really loved that work, and it got me the job on WALL-E. So in February 2005, I finally started. He gave us kind of a story download of where that story was at that time. These are actually the notes that I took that day on a very small scrap of paper. I look back now, and it's a very strange movie to me. The humans were like these, not very non-human creatures with their own culture and fashion. The story was very different when it started out. But there's also notes I took about replacing Eve's heart with a battle-droid heart, and things that never made it into the final film, including this. This was the back of that piece of paper, my grocery list. So Andrew sent me down and told me that I'm designing WALL-E and Eve. He was very impressed with my work, so he gave me these jobs, and he said, get to work. He gave me this sketch that he actually personally drew. He loved this proportion of WALL-E to Eve. It reminded him of this relationship of Diane Keaton to Woody Allen. So I took that sketch and these three items that he told me about before, and I started sketching. Like that weekend before, I was just drawing whatever came to mind, designing his hands and how he might scoop his garbage and how he might get around, his wheels and his treads, and how those might function as garbage scoopers. And just getting into the details very quickly. Whatever came to mind, I would put it down on paper, all the tools he might use to chop up the garbage, his treads, design of those, how they fold up into his box, overall sketches, and just an impression of what he looks like. Does his body come apart so that he can get even more garbage into himself so that it can pack down. This was a sketch I did for my own personal use. I was responsible for the entire design of WALL-E, so I needed to break him down into all these little different pieces. I'm responsible for even the design of the bolt that is used on him. So this helped me establish in my head what I needed to do. This is Ralph. production designer, telling me how tall he wanted Wally to be. Also, it's time for art review, so we go back in with Andrew, and we show him more work. He responds, and he might have a different idea about the work. He'll advise us accordingly. He might even have a different story idea. This is when we hear about this stuff, and we can change our course accordingly. This person brought a robot in to demonstrate to us how a robot might climb stairs. So we looked at this, and we just looked at it to see if we could, bring anything from it into the design of Wally. And I was looking very closely at the materials and the finish of this robot to see what I could use for the design of Wally. Again, back to this sketchboard, looking at the hands, how big do the hands get? He's 500 years old, so does he, retrofit himself with found objects like this? Does he repair himself? These are just very loose ideas, getting down into, again, retrofitting for his treads. If they break, what does he use to fix those? I was getting, again, very tired of drawing with my hands, so I decided to start building. And like I did with the furniture, I just wanted to express myself in a different way, and I start figuring out things kind of on a different level. This is a very rough computer-generated model that we started with, based on very early sketches I did. I would go into this and just do a quick layover with trace paper, describing how the surfaces should be. Like, should we thicken up his arms, make him look a little stronger? And that's one thing that Ralph, the production designer, reminded me of, is that he is a earth mover after all. He's got to have a little bit more robust appearance. So I went in and did some sketches accordingly. And it turned out, he was a little bit too robust, but we were in the process of designing his hand, and he has some instruments on the top surface of his box that he needs to operate. So how does his hand reach up there? We had to go through and engineer this part. After all, we have the ability to kind of cheat when we do these designs. We can take a hand off, and in the scene we can put it anywhere outside of the camera frame. So here we could put the hand and it would work, but at the end of the day we really wanted to keep his body intact and keep him real. We wanted him to really very much work. So back to the drawing board and establishing how that hand might work on this kind of inverted C track that we designed. It allowed full movement of his hands and his arms and his hands, and gave him this ability to get very close to the ground so that he could get all the garbage into him and compact it. Looking at things like his backpack. After all, he is kind of like a Cub Scout. He goes around collecting things. And I saw this image of a dump truck at one point, and I thought the rear end of that very much looked like a backpack. So I simply put it on the back of Wally. Again, back to the models, just kind of fleshing out the design, looking at how the head and the treads and the arms might stow, so it all kind of made sense. Looking at how his body might come apart, so he's filling himself with garbage and compacting down. Looking at his suspension, how his undercarriage might work. And again, just kind of tracing over these images and developing those designs even more. So at this point, we had a pretty final Wally. We went on a field trip to this place called Jet Propulsion Laboratories in Pasadena, California, where they were working on the Mars rover. And we wanted to go down there and get an impression from them of how they work and how they design. And we went in and looked at this very rough prototype, and very closely just looking at the materials and the mechanics of that, and seeing what we could draw back into the design for Wally. And looking at this beautiful lens and how the depth and the layers it had. We took this all back home, and we looked at a few other robots as well for inspiration. And so that's about 1 year on the project. And at this point, we have a very, very solid Wally design, but at this moment, we didn't really have a great direction for Eve. So Andrew sat me down again, and he gave me 3 criteria. He said that she should hover, she has a womb, and she's very elegant and simple. So he gave me this sketch, I guess, of his impression of what Eve should be. And I was very confused by this sketch, but I took it away, and it was very apparent early on that Eve should be this very soft, feminine shape. And that's pretty much what she was doing for the rest of the project. We took her into clay sculpting very early to establish proportion and to look how, the head and the hands float off the surface. We looked closely at the hands here, just how the digits float off and become fingers that communicate things. And so next, we were looking at things like she has a weapon, so how does that weapon embody itself in her arm, or how does it transform? We looked at her visor screen. We're very up close and personal on her eyes a lot. In the movie, that's where a lot of the expression comes from. So we needed that detail in there to convey that expression. Looking at the area she keeps things in herself, this womb area, does it look like a furnace inside? Here's a painting describing kind of a light effect that happens whenever her arms or her head separates from her body. And if there is a light effect, how is it emitted from that surface? So we're going in and look at the materials and how translucent and how they affect in light. And exactly what is emitting that light, this graphic design right here on the bottom of her helmet. So at this point, Andrew stopped us, and he actually had something to say, and well, it turns out he changed the story. He presented us with these 3 storyboards that describe an Eve who has been, actually is dead in this sequence, and Wally, who is attempting desperately to save her life by tearing his guts out and rebuilding her. Of course, hopefully you've seen the film, and you know the film to be actually the inverse of this story. It's Wally who actually dies, and Eve who attempts to save his life. But in this very early rendition of the film, Wally discovers that her heart, that Eve's heart, has been blown up and has to repair it himself by pulling out his own heart and retrofitting it into her. So we had to go back into these existing characters and really develop this kind of design program on top of an existing design program. We had to look at the heart and how it came apart and the internal pieces that he uses to reconstruct it, the wiring and even down to the textures and the scarring that happens from the lightning bolt. We had to get back really down into this kind of detail. Of course, with Wally, we had to go in and design him a heart as well. So we in this area, we decided to put his heart that comes out, that he can manipulate and retrofit into Eve's heart. Here's some shots of him tearing his guts out for her. And once some changes later, we put all this work up into our review with Andrew, and we were very disappointed to hear that the gag went away. He decided it just didn't work with the movie as it evolved. And this is one thing, it's a very good lesson, is to remain flexible in your work. Things like this will happen and you just have to move on, because you really have to trust the vision of the director and that they're making the best choice for the project. So I continue with what we call a model packet, designing a model packet for Wally. This is basically an instruction booklet that I will hand over the wall to the modelers downstairs so that they can build this character as best they can. Just to compare, in Monsters Inc., this is Sully, this blue character here. We were very involved in the development of the skeleton and things like the muscles and the hair. Very complex model packet as a result. But it turns out that Wally actually was quite even more involved than that. Got into so many layers of design and things that we don't even see in the film, but the fact the way he can act and the pivot points and things like that. Animations that tested out, and all this while his head design was quite finished and detailed. We got into the look of his eyes. Again, we pulled this image from that field trip that I showed you, this very layered, beautiful lens. We thought it had a lot of life to it. We looked into using apertures for blinking mechanisms and things like that, just to achieve the final look that we got in the film. All told, Eve and Wally took about a year and a half total to design. It was a very long time. We took some time after that to actually look into the special effects we could use. We rented this, what we call the tank chair, to ride this around in the backyard file and wrote this over, and we looked at the tread marks that it left behind. This is very much the detail that we wanted in the film. In the meantime, I looked closely at the mechanisms. Again, seeing what I could draw into the design for Wally and make him even more legitimate and real. There's a whole other part of the art department dedicated to the look of things. These people put together a packet, another model packet, describing the surfaces on Wally. He's a 500-year-old robot, so of course he's rusted and worn out and dented. And we must know exactly how he was in this state. Of course, there's a sequence in the film as well that they show brand new Wallys. So we needed to know what he looked like clean as well. So there's another packet for that, describing how he looks like this. Towards the end of the film, we decided we wanted a full-scale Wally to go to the premiere of the film. So we worked with a company in Palo Alto, California, to develop this actual robot version of Wally, remote control. This is a shot of him, Frankenstein together. And this is his final on the set of a TV show in the States. And him acting and hanging out with the hosts. And this is him at the premiere in Paris, hanging out with Sigourney Weaver, one of the voice talents on film. The Visual Effects Society of LA was kind enough to nominate us for Best Character Design on this film. So we went down to LA one night and we actually won this award for recognition of that feat. And it's an amazing little award that actually lights up. So at this point, I want to show you a quick video of kind of a look back at my experience on Lucas.